So this goes back to way earlier, where you mentioned that you know the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness, right?
Yeah.
I always hear people talking about that like differences in some things like that, right? But I want to know, like, if you had to put certain traits down in a bucket list to really get in depth on the difference, what traits would you have in that list?
That's a real good question, Jesus. I would say, starting with assertiveness, the most important part, standing your ground. And regardless of what the discussion, the tone, the argument, whatever it is, that you stand your ground. And that goes with, your values and your principles, your opinions, your perspectives, your experiences. But you also leave some space for openness to learn to, or to admit like you're wrong. And the assertiveness also comes with like you can admit when you're wrong, but you don't have to grovel and be right there. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, or like making all these excuses in order to like please the other person, in order to prove to the other person. Like that's again, the assertiveness also comes internally as well, where you don't have to prove shit to somebody else, whether to justify or to defend like your opinion or your perspective or whatever it is. You get me? But you don't have to attack somebody's character. You don't have to attack somebody physically. You don't have to yell. You don't have to raise your tone of voice. And it's one thing to be passionate, but I think people also excuse passion with aggression. You know, and I think that's some of the things where it's like, if you disagree with somebody, you can respect somebody else's opinion, but you're not willing to let somebody else come and disrespect you. You're not willing to let somebody else come dismiss your opinion, or you're not willing to allow anybody to come and just shit on like what your opinion is. Like my opinion is as valid as yours. All right. So with the assertiveness, it's that. It's also being able to speak up and not focusing so much on like how the other person is going to take it as, or what the other person is going to say. Just, you're going to speak on it. This is how this is my opinion. This is why I believe what I believe. And that's that. You don't have to over explain. You don't have to, again, go to the offense and attack somebody else. You just state what you believe in, right? Assertiveness is also attached to stability, in my opinion, where you're able to have a discussion, whether it's an intense argument, and you're able to keep a level head, and you're able to stay cool headed in an intense moment. I kind of see like something like Mark. Like, no matter how the tone of voice the other individual was, or if they were constantly jumping in and interrupting him, he kept his cool. He stood his ground. He he gave his opinion. He listened to the other person. Even if his opinion was dismissed, he stood his ground. And I think as a man, being assertive, that's a good representation of what it looks like. Going to the aggression part, I mean, it's self-explanatory, I think, in many ways, right? The physical aspect of it. And whether that's like, like attacking somebody physically, putting your hands on them, trying to scare somebody, trying to intimidate somebody. And that's one thing that like I see with the manosphere, I see with this toxic feminism movements, where it's like they confuse aggression with assertiveness, and they think like shouting at the top of their lungs, attacking your character, your opinion, your perspective, talking over you, cutting you off, just, having this like tone of like aggression means that you're being assertive. And it's like, no, to me, I've always said this about us men. We say that we're not scared. We try to, claim that we're not scared of anything, but it seems to be that we're scared of our own fucking emotions. And if the minute that we're uncomfortable, we have to be aggressive with it. It's understandable, like if you're out in the wild and you're in danger. But if you're in a fucking argument with somebody and you're triggered, right? Triggered, right? You're triggered to respond aggressively because someone made you uncomfortable or someone didn't agree with what you had to say. That's such a bitch move, dude. Like, I don't know how else to put it. That's such a bitch move to do. And if you have to shout in somebody's face and tell them, shut them down, right? You trying to like speak over them in order to have the last say. That doesn't make you more of a man. That makes you a little bitch. So, though, at least to me, at 32 years old, the definitions and the differences between aggression and assertiveness. So, I kind of want to give an example, like a personal experience of my past, because, like I said earlier in a earlier clip, I didn't know growing up the difference or that there was a difference between like aggression versus like assertiveness. Um, and I grew up thinking that it was the same thing. Like you asserted yourself by being aggressive, right? Whether that was being aggressive in the tone of voice that you had, in what the words that you used, in cutting people off, speaking over them, yelling, you know, getting ready to strike somebody or just straight up just fighting somebody. Like that's the way that I came up. And unfortunately, I bled into a lot of my romantic relationships as well, where we would get into arguments. And because I felt like I was being disrespected, I felt that I wasn't being heard. And I was like, no, you're not going to push me around, walk over me, talk shit and whatever. So I would start yelling. I would start insulting. I would start going on the offense and not listening to what she would say. Um, and I did that through so many of my relationships, and even outside of that, like even like platonic or familial relationships, or even outside of that, just interactions that I had with people. The minute that I felt disrespected, I thought aggression, right? And I didn't like stop to analyze the situation and how serious it was, because there were some arguments that I was like, I could have easily just walked away. Instead, I put so much energy into it and I walked away feeling like shit, but thinking like, oh, shit, I told them, I showed them. And they're like, no, I didn't. And I felt good in the moment, but then I would feel like shit afterwards. Not because I felt guilty, but because I had to, how can I explain? Like, I had to like lower down the aggression in order to be able to like connect to people, right? And the older that I got, and the more that I healed, the more that I changed, the more that I started doing more self reflection and healing a lot of like trauma and doing some self corrections and all that. I started realizing I'm like, I'm causing individuals who I love and care about, who love and care for me as well, who I'm in relationships with, who are very important in my life. I'm causing them to fear me or even like a conversation with me. And that's not the type of relationship that I want to have. That's not the type of man that I want to be. That's not the type of example I want my kids to see in their father or my partner to have of me as a man, my family to have or my friends as me as a friend or family member, or even people that I'm supposed to help as a leader. You get me? Like, I don't want that for myself either. When I look at myself, like someone who I'm scaring people who I'm supposed to be protecting, I'm supposed to be caring for, I'm supposed to be loving. Like it's not supposed to be like that. And I grew up and I still have that belief system that, when it comes to the ones I love and care about, I will kill or I'll die for them. But here I am putting the fear into these individuals who I love and care about with my soul because my ego is fragile because I don't want to have my feelings, hurt, because I don't want to be uncomfortable for a couple minutes in a argument. And that doesn't mean agreeing with somebody else or even letting somebody disrespect you. But if someone is disrespecting you, then that's the minute that where you're like, you know what, we're not getting anywhere. You're not listening to me. You're not respecting me. I'm not gonna keep disrespecting myself by letting you disrespect me. You know, by giving you more of my time and attention. Like, no, we're not having this bullshit. And a lot of people can't accept that, right? But my mom always told me this growing up. Crazier is the person arguing with the crazy one. Now, it sounds better in Spanish, right? But it's the truth. Like, it's one thing for the other individual that you're arguing with to be crazy, but then what does that make you? If you're right there arguing with the individual, you know that they're crazy. What does that make you? You get me? So to me, like, I had to learn the difference between it in how it affected the individuals around me, but also myself as an individual, and how it wasn't doing the effect that I thought it was having, and not on my life, not on my relationships, not in my decisions, not in my happiness, my peace of mind. Right? Again, it's just scaring them off, and then but staying in that same place. So I guess where I'll end, and then I'll turn it over to you. Where I'll end. If you're in a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, familial, platonic, or just some random interaction, or even a professional uh, argument with somebody, and you see that you're being disrespected, you don't have to take that. You assert yourself by letting them know, hey, I'm not gonna let you disrespect me, or hey, this is my opinion and my perspective, you know, and you don't have to agree with it, but you will not disrespect me, without it needing to get to a point where we're putting hands on each other. It should never get to that point. And if it ever gets to that point, that's where you're not going to get into a fight with somebody out in the street and then try to have a friendship afterwards. I mean, maybe there's crazy situations where that's happened, right? But typically you wouldn't do that. I would hope that in your life, if you're willing or you're feeling close to that point where you're about to put hands on each other, whether it's your partner, your friend, your family, I would hope that you have the maturity, stability, and wisdom within you to say, this is not a healthy place I want to be, or an individual I want to be around. I need to distance myself, and I need to set those boundaries where you're not going to keep doing this, and I'm not going to keep allowing myself to keep doing that. Because you can only hold other people at fault for what they do, but if you're also making the same decisions, then you're also at fault. So that's what I got to share, Jesus.
Speaking on assertiveness and aggressiveness, right? Because, as you said earlier before, like, there's a lot of dudes who think that they are one and the same. And as you grow older, you find out that it's not one and the same. I think realistically, the only time the aggressiveness might come in is if, maybe there's like potential danger or whatever. But for the most part, as you said, it's like to stand your ground, to have humility, to have grace for yourself and others, to have compassion also, and to understand. Now, as someone who dealt with family members who I know for a fact have anger issues, right? I remember as a little kid, a parent of mine would not really lecture me, but more so yell at me. And I thought that for a long time, that's how you got your point across, by yelling at someone. But as I got older, I didn't really have any role models to teach me this, but it was just through experience. I learned that obviously you don't have to yell at anyone to get your point across. Um, I think it's also too that like a lot of dudes, they don't learn that, and it's really sad, honestly. Uh, some people, might call it that they have their emotional outbursts and stuff like that, and I think that that's very, very true. Um, there is another factor of assertiveness where you also have to communicate. And if that means communicating the fact that you don't feel uh, good emotionally to have a conversation, then so be it. You're being assertive by saying, hey, I don't feel emotionally okay right now to have this conversation, but we can continue it later. And, hopefully the person that you're talking to is receptive of that. I think that with assertiveness and aggressiveness, they don't have to go hand in hand, right? But I do think that there is a time and place for one and the other.
Transparency, I was the example that Jesus learned from about emotional stability.
What? No, I didn't.
I told him, I was like, Jesus, you can't just go around slapping people when you're upset, right, man?
But I want to slap people. Yeah.